Hello and welcome to yet another edition of Indiepocalypse Radio. I'm your host, Andrew, the edit. No, welcome again to Indiepocalypse Radio. Uh, your one part post con chat, your one part interview show. It's Indiepocalypse Radio. I forgot the sequencing, but I think I've got it in my brain again. I'm Andrew. I'm your host of this. I'm the editor, etc. of Indiepocalypse. We're here to talk. This is a show, of course, where we talk to indie apocalypse developers or just people in the games world or people in the art world or just people I feel like talking to. It's a broad spectrum of people. But here today, starting off, we have a developer you may know from issue 51 of Indiepocalypse, which uh, previously newest, but no longer. It is Meg Mosman with Chaos Dancing and While True, It Is Not Sufficient. Hello, Meg. How you doing?
Great, thank you. How's it going?
It's going good. Going great. Ready back in the swing of shows. I had like 2 or 3 weeks off because of trips, and I'll have another week off next week, but because of trips. And trying to think in my brain how you host this show after doing this 150 times or whatever. But
Feel you.
I think I got it. First off, I have a very important question for you. Uh, how did you hear about Indiepocalypse?
I heard, honestly, I don't 100% remember. I think I saw something on the Baby Castles Discord, which a different Discord friend had like routed me to.
Okay.
And and I've been sort of lurking around your Discord for kind of almost a year, I think.
The Indiepocalypse Discord, the ideal Discord to lurk because I think that's what everyone does, and I like it that way. it's
Yes.
I found Discords odd because I'm like, oh, I should pay more attention to those, but I'm like, also they all feel like friend groups, and it's weird to just walk into those and be like, hey, I'm gonna hang out. I don't want to ever be the new friend in a group. There's a
Y-
uh, there's an oddness to it to me.
Yes.
So instead, I just invented a show and invite people onto it as my solution.
It's awesome. Mhm.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of in and out of the. I imagine there's a lot of NYU and different New York people within Indiepocalypse. The the NYU to Indiepocalypse pipeline seems like a strong one sometimes, just because I think maybe how their course load works and maybe like the culture of design kind of feeds into the kind of things that I personally also enjoy.
Let's see this. I, actually more from I myself am not even a New Yorker. I'm
Ah,
from Anna, but friends
that,
of friends of friends.
right. And on the internet, you don't need to attend. You don't need to go to Baby Castles, the physical space. You can just go to Discords.
Yes,
And
yes, this
they don't they don't treat you to. They don't require you to whatchamacallit, take a New Yorker quiz.
exactly.
I'm looking at your it's weird also looking at your page and increasingly seeing like I'm like, oh, Linson Line was on the show like 2 days ago or whatever. Or not too, or fairly recently. I'm like, I like increasingly as I look at comments on people's pages, it's like, oh, there there's increasingly more and more people that I have never heard of before, but then it's like, oh, there's that broad interconnectedness where it's like it's smaller than you think, but also infinitely large. Indie game making.
Yes, yeah. I mean, it's great just that it's something that, like, I mean, for myself as someone who, like, does random stuff in janky JavaScript, I appreciate that it's just something where you can do something and post it and people will
Yeah.
get it, like not a significant audience, but
No, but there's like I've been thinking more about like how much stuff reaches, a quote unquote significant audience,
hmm
It's such a small percentage of art like falls into that category.
it's very true. And I don't know. I mean, I definitely am a believer in people finding, making and consuming the art that suits them.
Yeah, yeah, it's is something worse because is an album worse because only you look on Bandcamp, you see that only 12 other people bought it, You're like,
Yeah.
"Oh, I don't like this anymore because not enough people like it, I guess."
Yeah. Um, yeah. Taste is determined by majority rule.
Yeah, that's and I understand that it's difficult to be the person who's like does who likes the things that nobody talks about, you know, uh, to have like a weird, that eclectic taste means you like people have a conversation. You're like, I have nothing to say about this, or when you try to start something about something you like, other people are like, I don't know what you're talking about. So there is like that alienating part of it, but also, I don't know. I don't sit around and talk about I don't know TV shows all the time. I guess,
Yeah.
or I find the
Yeah.
ones that I find the couple of common touchstones.
Right. Yes. It will give you some topic for small talk.
Right, right. Or like, I know you like X show. I also like that, but I also like 30 other things that maybe we can't talk about, but I still enjoy them. Um,
Yes.
but we've talked a little vaguely about these games, art, and making things. But if people are unfamiliar with the two games, being Chaos Dancing and While True It Is Not Sufficient, how would you describe them?
Um, Chaos dancing I like to think of as sort of a an essay about escapism that is chaotic and as ugly as I can make it without exerting any actual effort,
Right.
because it is trying to depict the sort of mindscape I am attempting to escape from.
Yeah, yeah.
And while, yeah, oh, while truth is not sufficient is more, I guess I would describe it as, or I have described it as like this sort of bodiless immortal wanderer who starts peeking in windows trying to see if they're missing much. And I think the overall answer is no, they aren't. And I think in it is like both of them I would say have in common being about, like, on the one hand, reality as I and most people experience it most of the time does not feel sufficient, while true it is not sufficient. But at
Right.
the same time, it's like it's really hard to get your imagination to come up even to that level. And this is about what happens when one fails to do that, I guess.
Yeah. No, it's I've uh as it's something I encounter more as I bring Indiepocalypse to different shows, and I skew very much towards these sorts of more abstract, non conventional. You put anti you on while true you put the term anti game itself, and I was like, I run into the problem like how you describe, the language of games, describing games is very particular, or like the common language of it is very like, uh, do I, puzzle platformer action FPS roguelike, they're gameplay forward rather than like theme forward. Um, which I feel is often how you describe most other. I mean, there are broad genres often, but I feel like it's very easy, very common in art to describe things like thematically or like conceptually more than just saying. To say a movie is a drama is the simplest way to describe it, and often barely describes it.
Yeah, I think so. And this, like, the sad truth is like, I don't know, would you call true it is not sufficient, like maybe some sort of kinetic novel? Because the basic idea is you get trapped in infinite loops and there is no win.
Yeah, right.
It's
And
like,
it's like you can't shape the narrative. So yes, I guess technically is a kinetic novel. It's close to not exactly collage because I've a collage game is something I sort of think about. It's also called like people. There's a phrase plundercore that's
mhm.
used in a niche setting of repurposing other art. I like to think of it as almost like collage, as a more understandable or more what's the word traditional phrasing of it. But it
Okay.
is like they're like it's digital z. It is it's I guess kinetic novel. It's just weird because it doesn't fit into um, game definition very well. Um, but you probably like if you spend a lot of time on itch, it's also like oh I know what these games are. I know the language of them, but how if I'm on a loud convention floor, how do I describe it?
Yes. And yeah. And I think like, um, what do I think? I'm not sure what I think, but I think that
No, that's what you don't have to. Right? It is uh, that's the difficulty of the artist describing their art, and sometimes like I don't know how to describe fully. Even the person who makes it doesn't know how to fully break down mechanically or like systematically the thing that they made. It's like you sort of said earlier, you make something, try to convey a feeling.
yeah, that definitely is, I think, what I'm doing. It's just sort of, yeah, and yeah, infinite loop might be the feeling I'm after. I don't
Right.
know.
I do often think of and I don't think it's even like a bold claim to think art is just our way of condensing ourselves sometimes so that other people can understand it. This long, broad, complicated ideas that we have about ourselves.
Yeah, yeah, I think so. I think that is a major purpose that art serves. It can communicate as like a point of view in a way that like, yeah,
That
that
yeah, that we couldn't tell somebody.
yes, yes, and like sometimes being me just feels like a bunch of really bad photographs and really bright, ugly colors, and you know, noise.
Yeah, right. You're right. And in playing that, you like kind of you see a person's sort of I don't know, an inner noise of like,
Yeah.
and that's a lot of what Indiepocalypse is tries to focus on is sort of oh I very clearly see like the human who made this,
Right. Yeah.
uh, even if I don't fully like you can't get a full picture of someone, but like the idea that like oh I feel the human touch upon this work, uh,
Yes.
that that can be lost, I think, in a lot of games of like, their games are a very odd sort of thing. Uh, or I think you can approach them from a more detached space than you can approach maybe other forms of art.
Right, yeah, because like there are enough technical challenges that a lot of effort has to go into solving the technical problems instead of doing the self-expression.
Right. Right. And or you, yeah, and so you can have a bunch of solutions to technical problems and call it a game, and it will be a game, and it might even be a game that I enjoy, but it's not like solving the technical problems of writing a novel. You still have to then write the novel. Like
Yes.
you can't just write like opening act, ascending, descending action, finale, or whatever, and then release it as a book.
Yes. Very, yeah.
But you can like, oh, I made a platformer and I put it moves and you collect things and the levels end and you just kind of have that and it is a finished game. Maybe you put in a new gameplay quirk of your own,
Right, yes.
but
'Cause-
it is like closer to like I think some art forms often go to like a pretentious term, like your film or um, the graphic novel.
yes.
But what I strive is games maybe should go the opposite instead, like describe things as software if they're like further from that, because that's often some games will feel closer to like the newest version of Microsoft Excel than uh, a new piece of art.
Dopamine production system.
Right, right. It's like, oh yes, I've made a new release. It does things. It has updates. It's improved on the formula, so to speak. But uh, you can approach. I guess you can approach the idea of the formula more rigidly, or like,
Yeah. And I feel like all art forms like you can kind of go that direction too,
yeah.
though. Like, I mean, I don't know. Have you ever looked at like the descriptions, submission descriptions of like Harlequin novels? Like,
Oh right. Yes. Yes. The I.
I've seen people be like, writing a romance is basically like instructing a table. It's a craft more than an art. And I feel like but even if you get out of a genre that's stigmatized, you still have, I mean, I think that like the expressive dimension and the craft dimension probably both have to exist in some measure, and I am much more interested in the expressive dimension, probably rather to my detriment.
No, I
But
think it is a. It's a it's a weird thing to tell people. It'd be like just give it your work will flourish in 10 years. You're ahead of your time, um, and it's the thing I feel about a lot of like modern and not modern, not strictly modern, but like the quote unquote itch.io dev. The independent creator I think is still ahead of their time. Like I think culture is kind of catching up to games having this more accepted like avant-garde, non-traditional sort of scene.
yeah,
But
yeah, what little I've seen, I'm very grateful I was not trying to do this like 20 years ago.
yes, no, it's I think there was like still some people who like were in, obviously people are always into that sort of thing, but it feels like more niche. Um, and you still feel it in that there's still like not that much like quote unquote art games kind of trickle through to the public consciousness unless these sort of like small independent art games don't usually trickle through unless they're like basically sandwiched inside of a very understandable video game
Right.
generally.
Oh, that makes sense.
But I feel like it's
Yeah.
breaking out more. I have not played yet. 1000X resist or this resist 1000X. I don't remember which order the two go in, but my impression is it feels less like a video game. Um,
Hmm.
and or maybe it isn't. Maybe you know what? Maybe it is an action sort of. I'm not sure. Uh,
How do you spell that?
when
I should at least be aware of this.
1000X resist.
Okay.
It just did it just win the IGF Nouveau, or did it just win? Just was it just the IGF whatever grand prize winner as well? I think I don't remember,
Okay, there it is.
but it
Nice.
seems cool. Um, but also fellow traveler might be publishing good stuff. Maybe I'm looking more towards. I'm interested in like these sorts of publishers that kind of crop up that have like niches and that kind of thing. It's kind of an important sort of uh, they have like broad numbers of publishers available, and because there are some things you can only make if you have so much money, or make them
Yeah.
within a reasonable time frame because you need to be like, oh, I need to hire people to do this. I need to, you know, have a team that gets paid.
Yes. Um,
S-
I feel very lucky in that like I have a ridiculous overambitious general project that most of the things I release fit into somehow. But and I mean I'm lucky for that. I'm also lucky in that I can do at least sort of most of the things involved in game development.
Right.
Big sort of asterisk on the sort of or big emphasis on the sort of rather, but um it's still gonna take a gazillion years and whatever, and all the tech is going to change so much between now and when I have anything that even vaguely resembles a finished product. That
Yeah, that's the odd thing about uh, tech in games. Is like, well, I hope this thing is playable. You know,
yeah,
in the future, I have some issues sometimes where like I go way back to some games sometimes to invite, and they're like, is this playable anymore? This was a Unity browser game that I don't know is playable.
oh, yeah. Gosh, yeah.
And so it's odd, but I think people are generally good at like keeping up technology and making sure that things are playable to some degree. Speaking of the endless persistence of things, rocks. Um,
Rocks. Yes.
Meg, what's your favorite type of rock?
I thought about this a bit, and
Yes.
I think I'm gonna say volcanic tuff because which is like I get it. I think it's like condensed ash,
Yeah.
and I reason I say this is that I um as a kid would like hike with my dad on mountains, and there's this great sort of hidden crater mountain that like looks very normal going up, and then when you reach the top it's this big white moonscape, and it turns out it is probably a dead volcano. I sent a few rocks from it to my geologist uncle, and he's like, this is tough. So, yay, TUFF, tough.
Yes. No, I'm looking at it. Excellent choice of a rock. The idea of there's just a volcano somewhere. There is no longer a volcano there.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
and follow up. Do you have a favorite Toho character?
I do not, but I did my little bit of research, and I have a Discord friend named Zoe. She's a musician, and she suggests Hata no Kokoro.
Let me see.
Ooh,
That seems like okay, okay, yes. Hopeless
a villain made
masquerade.
of masks?
Yes, there's like masks going on from, of course,
Yeah.
the 13.5th edition of the Toho series. I am not the I am not unfortunately I'm not a Toho encyclopedia, but this is a new one to me. But also, yeah, there's a lot of masks going on here, like a skirt of masks and there's floating masks and masks everywhere. It's a cool little
Masks are.
it's a cool little thing. I like see it's part of it. I like learning about new little Tohos every now and then.
Yes. Yay.
But Meg, thank you for joining me here today.
Thank you very much for having me.
A true treat to have the show just that exists as an excuse to, hey, what if I meet the people behind these games? Um, and it's like in the same way that more intros into the scene is what I'm trying to make, and glad to have you here, both on here and in within the greater Indiepocalypse. Uh,
Thank you.
I'm gonna go on break, and we'll be back in about 2 minutes and 11 seconds. Uh, Goodbye for now.
Little blue pills, bottles of Cody lying on the shelf at dawn.
Hello and welcome back to Indiepocalypse Radio. That was Jeff Rosenstock with Little Blue Pills. We're here with our next guest, who, breaking out of the Indiepocalypse mold, is unrelated to Indiepocalypse. Instead, has a site as a streamer, does a lot of other, falls into that, I don't know, press category where you wear about 80,000 different hats. I would say IntelliGame. In my instinct is one word to call IntelliGame. IntelliGame is Josh Boykin. Josh, how you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing all right. How are you?
I'm doing great. Now, if people are, if someone, I described a whole bunch of things. If someone were unfamiliar with IntelliGame, how would you describe it?
Oh boy. For as frequently as I get that question, I feel like I never really have a good answer, which is a thing I should probably do some thinking about. I would describe IntelliGame as it's a community that is dedicated to making deeper connections between the games we play and the world we live in.
Yeah.
So I run a primarily right now, I run a Twitch stream where we do long plays of games, a lot of games that are really narrative centric,
Yeah.
and we try to do deep dives into those games. So as opposed to just the what I think most Twitch streams are of, somebody playing the game and it's kind of the experience of watching somebody usually for the first time go through a game
Right.
or
Right. Kind of like
yeah.
if you were playing a game with a friend almost.
Yeah. If that friend wanted to convey that they spent some time in college getting a bachelor's degree in English and wanted to prove that it was worthwhile
Right.
to themselves by talking to you, that's probably a little bit closer to the
Yeah.
feel.
Yeah, no, that is. Oh, yeah, I was talking more broadly of like that is what long plays are. But in your specific long plays, your friend who's like, yeah, no, I, uh, uh, and that's
Yeah.
that is a cool thing to have, within the broader space of games. The idea of like, oh, let's, because I'm sure plenty of people have a friend who's like, you watch a movie or something, and afterwards or even during, they're like, oh, did you see this? Did you think about this? What about this and this and this? And
Yeah,
immediately, you want to think about it.
yeah, I mean, my whole concept or approach is that I think that media provides us some really amazing opportunities to better understand ourselves and the world we live in. Like everything that we experience is some sort of essentially story that we're
Right.
taking into our brain and processing. And I think that there are so many ways that people take games and then this sort of analysis of them as literature or storytelling mediums, and they think of those two different camps and then assume that based on whichever camp is for them in other types of media, the games are not for them because the other thing applies too. So it's like either games are children's toys and consumer products and
Yeah.
they're, things for violence, whatever, or we talk about the analysis of games and it becomes, academic ludonarrative dissonance. Like, it feels like it is squirreled away in this really high echelon tower of academia. And so when it comes to fusing those two spaces, I think a lot of people who say, let's take games seriously, it makes it seem as if the only people who do that are more stodgy academic types.
Right.
And I think many people who would otherwise say, oh, I would like to think a little bit more critically about my media, say, oh, well, but video games are just Grand Theft Auto, just cause violence, just,
Yes.
Madden or whatever, and are also ignoring in the process of that like there's a lot of cultural value and merit to a Grand Theft Auto, to a Madden, to a FIFA, to not just the ways that, not just the stories and the products that they are in themselves. And I say product not in a commercial sense, but as a,
Yeah.
the actual essence of the art form that exists, but also the massive impact that it has on, you could say culture as a whole, but just every individual who plays it and takes those stories and ideas and it becomes a part of their life. We spend entire work weeks,
Yeah.
worth of time playing these games. Of course they shape who we are.
Right.
And
And
that doesn't mean that all of a sudden you play a Grand Theft Auto before somebody gets it twisted out here, and decides 7 years later to dig through my files and they're like, "And see on Indiepocalypse, he said that games shape the and after Grand Theft Auto."
yeah,
Like this
yeah.
is not the suggestion that somebody like plays Grand Theft Auto and it's like, now it's okay for me to go and get a gun and shoot up or whatever. Like
Yeah, no.
there's no statistic there's no research that proves that. And I could go into the conceptual discussion of why I think people inherently understand or could inherently understand that that's not true, but I'm trying not to get into full monologue mode.
Right.
Uh,
No,
yeah, people can
no,
watch the Twitch stream for that.
it is like I've been thinking more about the weirdness that we call all these interactive works games, But would
Right,
you like FIFA, like something like FIFA or Madden is a great example because like would you call a soccer game like a TV show? You know,
right, yeah.
um,
It
and if it fits in that same thing where like they're games, but they're not like they're Madden is not the same thing as like Grand Theft Auto.
right.
They're like these broadly different, nor are they the same as like a small browser based art collage game. There are all these different
Yeah,
sort of like, and it does like even. I think this is partially just because that's like where the market to get paid for it is. Criticism itself also kind of smashes all these things into one big clump, uh, and then tries to reconcile that clump, which feels like an impossible task. Uh,
well, I blame uh no, I don't want to go that route.
okay.
I I think I I think the struggle comes from I think that the struggle is one of legacy,
Yeah.
that we we conceptualize what a thing means today based on our understanding of the world as it stands and our processing of what seemed to be possible in the past, right? If you're a visionary, if you've got some energy, you apply some imagination, it's also shaped by what you hope for the future. But I'd say the word visionary as if
Yeah.
it's like this huge thing, but like I just mean that for most people, the way that they engage with a thing is not actively shaping its future. It's engaging in its present, and that present is informed by things that happened in the past. When you look at a hammer, right? Like you're
Yeah.
like, okay, this hammer was created in the past. I'm holding it in the present. What do? I hit a nail with it. Like you might think out of the box or whatever, but primarily your whole concept of what a hammer does
Yeah, yeah.
is is shaped by hitting by the presence of nails and hitting and how people have historically hit nails with them. And so uh, when I say that there's an issue of legacy when it comes to talking about games, when it comes to sort of the criticism of games, the discussion of games, like so much of the history of how many people have critically thought about games, it involves a number out of 5 or 10.
Yeah.
It involves, a an assessment of what they would consider these discrete, how do the graphics look? How is the sound?
What are
What is the gameplay? How many hours do you get out of it, right? And
what are my
like,
pro what's my pro and con list?
right, and so it's not I don't consider it a flaw. I don't consider it a problem that so many people, when they think about, how do we talk about games when they are discussing them with their friends, and they're diving into what they would consider, what is deep discussion.
Right.
It oftentimes is shaped by these frameworks that were shaped by Game Informer and PC Gamer and the ways that many of us first ever saw anybody critically talk about or think about
Yeah,
what a game is.
the very like consumer review like legacy of game criticism
Absolutely.
is
And
like
oh, go ahead.
I was thinking because like that pro and con list feels like how often do you read a film review or read an album review and it has a pro and con list? Those are for like washing machines. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that the trade-off is that, like, even when we think about a film review, even when we think about an album review, oftentimes, even if we think about an outlet like Pitchfork, which used to go a little bit further askew from sort of the conventional, let's just talk about the quote unquote merits of the music,
right.
you still have to boil it back down to, but what's its score,
Yes.
right?
What out of 10 is this?
Exactly. For me, one of my biggest influences in how I've approached games and discussion around games is a magazine that unfortunately, uh, like many fantastic pieces of gaming media, has uh, gone on permanent hiatus
Yes.
or just, I mean, shut down, right? Um, but Offworld.
Right.
So Offworld was this digital mag that was founded by Laura Hudson and Lee Alexander, and what I love about it is that when you read when you read an article in Offworld, it felt like it wasn't about, is this game good? Is this game not? Should you spend money? Should you not? Should you play this game? Should you not? It was instead about a human experience. It was a story about a group of people who found, a group of women who found community in pinball. It was about The Witcher 3 and there not being any black people and the discussion around it. Like,
Yeah.
the whole idea, to me, it feels like I'm going to trust you to make a decision about whether or not you think this is good or worth your time. But here is a story, here is an idea, here is a concept that this game brings to light that is impactful to my life and that I hope will be impactful to yours by doing this discovery, listening, finding out, whatever.
Yeah.
And so, yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I want to see more of.
And the benefit of I think another strength of stuff like that is when it feels like self-contained. in the sense that it feels like it's not written to inherently like know that somebody online is going to read. I'm going to share this online after the fact, if that may.
Absolutely.
Because I feel like some writing is inherent like with an online reaction in mind. Um, and I've I was talking to a friend, and he was saying something to the effect of, people the societal shorthand of people will say I saw that people were saying X thing is really good, and I was like, having never seen that kind of thing, I was like, what people, who are the people? And the concept of who are the people, um,
They. Yeah.
is something that's existed in my brain for since then. Whenever I think of like these sweeping public opinions, I go, well, what people? Who are they? Who are they? I don't know who they
Yeah.
are.
Yeah. Yeah, it is a I mean it is they're always they love it, they hate it, and you're like but
Who's
who
they?
is they, who is
Right.
they?
I,
um
I more trust the opinion. Like I've definitely skewed towards more trusting the opinion of like somebody like the opinion of one person that I know is worth more than 10,000 people I don't know. Uh,
mhm.
especially
Well, this oh
or
no, go ahead.
I was gonna say or feels like the point is articulated enough that I feel like I understand where the person is coming from.
Well, this is the I think that this is the it's what makes me excited. This is my game criticism version of the kids are all right.
Yeah.
And I hope that this is true. I still find it very hard to find more discussion about games from this more personal experience reflective perspective. Like I was just having a conversation with a friend the other day, and we were talking about this idea of games and folklore, and she was talking about like the thing is like it's impossible for two people to experience a game in the same way, not
Right.
even in the like sense of um like obviously like two people read the same book and get different ideas, different meanings, things like that, right? But you're still dealing with the same printed words, if you're looking at the same book, I'm not talking about republishing or
Right.
translations
Right.
or whatever. But like you're still dealing with the same printed words in the same order, and even then you're still going to get potentially broadly different understandings of what is happening. And then you take some shit like fucking Ocarina of Time, which I self moderated my language because
Yeah.
I do that all the time, and also I don't know the Indiepocalypse,
Oh no,
PG, blah blah blah.
Indiepocalypse
But
is a show, is both a zine and a radio show for adults.
like, well, good. I'm sure the adults have heard the words. But the
Yeah.
point of the story is that like I'm streaming Ocarina of Time right now, and it was actually really interesting that there was this large moment of contention, probably episode 1 or episode 2, where as we were talking about this idea of like who is Link in Ocarina of Time, people have vastly different headcanons about who Link is and like Link's drive to do, yeah, anything
Yeah.
in Ocarina of Time. And like it got to the point that there were people who felt really uncomfortable with other people's concept of who Link was, especially when we started having this discussion about like Link as this sort of like empty shell, like yeah, no, like you kind of decide who Link is. There isn't a lot that like objectively says Link is this, Link is that.
Yeah.
My Link, my Ocarina of Time Link is a basically on the ace, somewhere on the ace spectrum, also probably somewhere on the other spectrum, on the autism spectrum,
Yeah.
who like is just like woke up one day and a fairy was like, go do this thing. I was like, I guess I don't have anything else to do. And then next thing you know, people are talking about how he needs to grow up and like be a real man, which is problematic. And he's just like, I'm trying to do good things. And then all of a sudden people are kind of hitting on him and some weird like underwater woman that like I've literally not even known that the Zora probably exist because I've been living in this like forest area with children that never grow up, and then all of a sudden I'm getting hit on and people are like, I'm gonna marry you, and I'm like, I really like what is the Hyrule equivalent of this is a Wendy's? Like
Yeah,
I
yeah,
don't understand any of this. But all that's to say, we experience games in such radically different ways, and I think that we my hope is that in the modern moment, when we have so many more people who can talk about games as personal experiences and set some of the stage that it's okay for us to come to different conclusions and to engage in this medium and feel differently and see characters differently and have a world of fan fiction and whatever, that it will create some space where, you know, people's legacy understanding of what games media isn't this is a 3 out of 5.
yeah.
It's this game broke my heart and I am so thankful it's here.
Yeah, I am finding, um, very anecdotally that uh, I do, when I go to shows, I do better with a younger audience because I think, and this is my broad conjecture is that as we progress further in time, there will be more people who were born and lived with games having always been a medium that existed. Uh, you
Yeah.
know, and like a medium with a broad range of expression that exists. There's plenty of people. The legacy media. Some of them pre-exist. Video games.
Hmm.
Or you grow up with the Atari NES era, which is very different than like, you know, this more modern era of a breadth of expression in games. And I think as you get more people injected into it, more people are just inherently thinking less of games as software and
Yeah.
more as just no different than a book, but a book you play or whatever.
Yeah. I think that makes perfect sense. Like, there are a lot of people who their first game was uh Super Mario Brothers. Their
Right.
first game was Legend of Zelda. Like hearing people talk about Ocarina of Time and the ways that there are like the sounds of the like re-dead screaming or like any of this different stuff, like you can tell it's still hitting them in their soul
Yeah.
because it's connecting to this element that of who they were when they were 9, 10, 12. I've never played it before. So I don't have that same thing to attach to, but there are people who their definitive moment is right now, people who are developing games and who are going to be shaping some of our criticism or whatnot. Their definitive moment is like making a real hard decision about Toriel in Undertale.
Yeah.
Their critical moment is seeing something in Ori and the Blind Forest. Their critical moment is something in Read Only Memories. Like a broad spectrum of experiences that were designed by people who wanted to tell stories and give experiences. And that I think that yeah, that gives me a lot of hope. And yes, Super Mario Brothers 3 on the Nintendo was clutch. So
Yes.
clutch.
It is. Are you familiar with? I've had them on the show. I'm a fan of this. Are you familiar with Bump Combat? Uh,
No.
.net. It's a relatively new site, and it is a lot of like. I think what you're describing of there are a lot of longer essays, more personal essays, also about like far more niche topics. Uh, like what's that Final Fantasy I can't think about. I'm drawing a blank on. The one with all the school, and they're all named after cards.
Type Zero.
Yeah, like Type Zero. That was one of their first essays.
I am glad you told me about this because this looks dope.
Yeah, yeah. Friend of the show and member of the chat. They have like a review of An Outcry on there as well. Like
Oh, whoa.
there's a lot of like ill bleed. I was ill like quote your joke, but there's also like Paris Dakar Rally and Minish Cap and like I think that is
Yep.
gonna be like a new generation of like you had not played Ocarina of Time before, and I think like approaching it without like that legacy of like I played Ocarina when I was 12. It was the best video game. Let's all play Ocarina of Time. Um, and like viewing without nostalgia.
Right.
I think nostalgia is a real curse around games. You know.
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's also a bit of a blessing in
Yeah.
fairness. Like I do think that there is an element to which we value just the presence of nostalgia, right? I mean,
Yeah.
capitalism, so much of capitalism, it's not about whether or not a thing is good. It's just whether or not it makes you feel like you did before you understood how much of the world was truly shit
Yeah.
and how much work there was to do. Um, but I agree that like there is this there is a clarity that I think that comes from appreciating a nostalgia and also recognizing the value of the present. I think that so frequently people like love and care about the past because it feels good in retrospect. And oftentimes we're in the present experiencing conflict struggles that feel insurmountable and oftentimes that feels bad. But I think that when we are able to do some of the perspective shifting, some of the internal work that gives us a stronger ability to value the present and the opportunities to make for the future, it makes nostalgia, it's just a component. You can tell that it's sugar
Yeah.
compared to the sort of the nutrients, the whatever. And sugar can be is often I have a sugar problem, so I'm speaking from personal experience. Sugar is definitely a thing that is you can have a great meal, a great sweet meal, but you can also recognize how filling and how satisfying it is to have the nutrients that come from other food,
Yeah.
and then also have a little sugar as well.
Right. Just have a little chocolate bar on the side. That is, I've been thinking more about the idea of I don't know have a snappy phrase for it, but like the vegetable video game, or the video game
Hmm.
equivalent of like eating your veggies that you can get with like
Hmm.
other art forms sometimes of like the feeling of like I know this is good and I'm going to enjoy it, but I don't want to watch it because it's going to be denser or like require more out of me. Um,
Twitch.tv/intelligame.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. No,
Uh,
you're looking for that. That's what made me think about it. Of like, um, there like this that is kind of a thing that is missing in the same in the broad culture, of course, of
yeah.
like the work like reading list, so to speak, for games.
Right. I think there's a it's there it's tough because so much of it also gets put into this sort of like greatest of literary canon
Right.
type discussion, which it has all kinds of problematic layers to it. But there's also this um I think it also is just like there are 9 million games coming. Yesterday, I looked at Steam a bunch because there are
Yeah.
games in the endless replayability sale that I knew I didn't need to buy. I have so many games I'm already playing, and still I was like, but it's on sale and it's only like $20 for like these 5 games. Like, and I'll probably make a YouTube there's so little time to sit with any individual piece
Right.
of any.
I have to date, I've released 52 issues of Indiepocalypse. Has 520 unique games from unique developers. No repeat developers, and that's just in the microcosm of hyper indie stuff.
Amazing.
And like there's like, folks, you might say that there are too many games for any one person to play in an apocalypse of independent games. One might argue.
Who would have
Um,
thought?
but the reality is, I think there's just not every person has to play everything. You
Agree.
if we were to stop right now, if they were to stop making games and I had to no longer work or eat or sleep, I don't know if I could finish every game ever made.
No, no, you did literally couldn't. I even think about just my Steam queue,
Right,
like
right.
just my Steam queue. I Panic Blizzard is my digital hoarding. Uh, I like I can talk about like oh so and so my parents,
Yeah,
my grandparents, whatever. But if my digital hoard were able to have corporeal form, I would have quite
Yes.
the pile of shame.
That that
So
that is why I like to, like, I can have a my a saved library of 300 movies, but
right.
the 6 Blu-rays that are sitting on my dresser occupy a space in my brain that I have to watch them.
Yep. 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 Yep.
And that is like, I the strength, the compelling strength of physical media that, like,
It. Mhm.
that sort of forces you to engage with it in its own way.
Well, and I think it's tough because like so before while you were talking with Meg and I really loved hearing Meg's perspective. Like I was going through and trying to explore a little bit of While True, and it's like the the benefit of having these digital spaces and digital media that you can create, comparatively quickly, like
Yeah.
not creating the art itself, but the actual how do I distribute it to a person? You don't have to print it on a cartridge and then get a cartridge held in a store
Right.
or a disc or whatever. Or maybe a flash drive that is conveniently put in an artistically created cassette tape case
That'd
that you
be
could
really neat.
purchase from. Yeah, where could somebody find such a
I
thing?
don't know
I
if,
wonder.
if if only there was one spinning around giving you a clue on the stream right now. uh, but no, yeah, that is part of it. Like, that's why, like, I would never forsake the digital component because, while true probably took about, I don't know, if I'm assuming, probably like
Well,
two
I mean, we
minutes
could
to
ask.
2 minutes to upload.
Yeah, right, right, right.
Right. So it's like, as opposed to, it would take me, maybe 2 minutes to make a tape, but then I have to send it to you.
Yep. Yeah, there's and so like the
Okay.
ability to. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yes. No. No. I saw the thing in the thing, and I was like, "This was somebody else making them as well." Like, no, because Panic Lesbian mentioned getting the Lesbian RPG USB came in a cassette from a while ago, a while back, and I was like, "Wait, was that?" Like, no, that was also me. I thought, like, I thought maybe that was Unity's games, but I thought
No,
I thought maybe, like, oh, I get excited when other people are doing it because I think it's like, it's the equivalent of like seeing a band at like a local, like, barcade or whatever, and they have CDs on their table.
sure.
Like game devs, I think, need like a super cheap format, like, to, like, the gulf between I'm a fully funded studio and I have literally no money. I think it's like super important that there is space between that for people to make like a little bit, because, like, unfortunately we need money.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, don't get me started on that.
no, it's I don't know how people don't think about it all the time.
Wealth.
Yes, yes.
Wealth
The
that
answer is
many of
the
us
answer
lack.
is institutional wealth.
Yeah.
But when you don't have that, I don't know how you don't always think about it. So it creates a weird thing where sometimes I feel like I'm thinking about uh, money. I mentioned money and think about money too much in games, but I'm like, maybe people in games just have too much money, uh,
Hmm.
and that's why they can have the luxury of not thinking about it when they wake up and go to sleep and constantly. But Josh,
Yeah.
speaking of things that have been around since the end of time, um, rocks. What's your favorite type of rock?
Well, thankfully, uh, Meg did the whole. I did my research, and literally saying I did my research suggested to me just a few minutes ago that I should do some research because I was not prepared for these questions.
Oh no.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I got luck of the draw that Meg, thank you for tanking for me. Um, the my favorite rock is probably a Tiger's Eye. Intelligame's colors are black and yellow because those are my two favorite colors. And I Tiger's Eyes are like I think if that counts, then
Yes.
that. If it doesn't count, then it's the rocks that were used in that scene from Everywhere Everywhere All at Once.
Okay.
Um,
I
yep.
Tiger's Eye, I would say, counts.
Okay.
They are minerals, gemstones. Yes, a metamorphic rock. There it is.
Great.
And
Uh,
follow up. Do you have a favorite Toho character?
My favorite Toho character, also recently researched, is probably Orange because uh, I just love the idea of having a bunch of different characters who seem to have, like ostensibly pretty like Japanese names and
Yeah,
significant backstories and whatnot. And then there's just a character who's orange.
perfect.
And yep, that sounds that sounds great to me.
Yes,
Well,
Orange, of course, from Lotus Land Story, the fourth Toho game, the fourth game in the Toho project,
mm,
released in Comic Cat in 1998.
whoa,
That's uh, that's the other like Toho's also been around for a super long time. That was on the PC 98. Uh,
that's Toho's Ocarina of Time.
yeah,
Ocarina of Time was 98.
there are so many. It's also why I like to bring this up constantly, even after people did stop asking it technically. Is that Toho started in '96, uh, uh, or like 96, 97, somewhere around there.
Wild.
And I guess people start thinking about like Comic Cat and that sort of thing, of like that specific like Japanese hobbyist space, which is a slightly different thing than the U.S. hobbyist space. Mostly because U.S. hobbyist, I feel like hobbyist is a bad word. Uh,
Yeah,
it's got a very negative or it's used very condescendingly, I think sometimes.
right.
Yes, PC
Yeah.
98 is very. I mean, I've played Toho games on that, so as far as I know, the PC 98 is pretty easy to emulate. Uh, yes, that's the other thing. Like, there's these whole consoles like and computers that like never made it to the U.S.
Right.
Of like how many people do you know that had a ZX Spectrum or like a Commodore? Like, I mean, even those were in the U.S., but they were like, from my experience, far less common.
Right.
But Josh, thanks for joining. We're gonna go on break before we get too deep into this, into
Yeah,
further.
yeah, yeah. Thank you for the discussion and the time.
Yeah, no, glad to have you. We're gonna be back in about 2 minutes and 38 seconds. Until then, goodbye. Hello and welcome back to Indiepocalypse Radio. That was Hazy Sour Cherry with Tour to Tokyo. We were talking briefly in the. We're back with Josh and Meg. We're all here. The whole everyone's here, as they
Oh,
say. Uh,
hey, hey,
hello.
hey, Meg.
Hey.
Uh, we were talking about well, what got me on the brain of talking about what got us to the Final Fantasy 13 was a Columbo in the chat. Of course, that's not Columbo. That I mean that is Peter Falk, but that is uh, the Elaine May classic Mikey and Nikki, which I love. Uh, basically, just a Peter Falk John Cassavetes two-hander, more or less.
Mhm.
But because I was reading on Wikipedia that it bombed. Uh, And I'm like, well, I guess of course it bombed, but the idea of games bombing and then like coming back later in life,
Yeah. Oh,
and
sorry. Go ahead.
that's FromSoft in a lot of ways. FromSoft is a studio of like if you look at their reviews, they're all like 5 out of 10 games.
Yeah, yeah.
And
You, oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was
I'm sorry.
gonna
I can't tell. Maybe the connection might be cutting out a little bit.
oh
Yeah. I also haven't taken my ADHD medication, so I could just be a little too active. Yeah.
no, you're good. No, my general rule is that I'm here every week. You're here once a week. You get priority.
I'm curious, Meg, do you have a game that's near and dear to your heart that maybe was panned?
I am. I don't think I actually know enough games that are popular enough to have gotten panned. I am almost a complete outsider to this field.
uh, you know, but that's also one of the things I really enjoy, and it almost like practically like if not seek out, am glad am sought out by people that fall within that kind of like frame of reference of I don't play games. I am unfamiliar with games, that sort of thing. Because I think,
I'd love.
Right?
sorry. Uh,
Oh no, I'm sorry. I'd love to know some of those outside games that we're in.
oh,
I
that's.
mean,
Sorry.
no, you go ahead. I
Okay.
don't really.
Oh, I didn't know who the question was directed to. Towards me.
Oh no, I'm sorry. I thought Meg had said that it was like not having games that you've maybe loved but were not well known enough to get panned. And I was like, well, those sound like they would be really good games.
Yeah, it's a cool. I mean, I don't even think I have really loved yet, unfortunately. I have been poking around on itch in hopes of gaining some slight vestige of genre awareness because I it feels a little rude not to.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm a book person, and yeah, but I mean, I'm trying to think what I have enjoyed on itch so far. And I mean, it is I'm gonna pull it up here because I'm drawing a complete blank and it's embarrassing. So why
No,
you guys
yeah,
carry on.
yeah. It's like no pressure at all. I just and I don't mean to. I think that the space that you create games from seems so like so informed and so thoughtful, and like it makes sense when you're like I'm a book person and like that feels like that tracks a lot. And I think it's honestly like I imagine, Andrew, like it's a part of what you're able to find by curating
Yeah.
this way, is that like there are so many people who are making meaningful, interesting game experiences, and it's in part because they're drawing a bunch of energy and a bunch of their thoughts and ideas from outside of the game space.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that is like. I think the thing that has the hardest time with Indiepocalypse and like within getting in Indiepocalypse is things that fall within like the very traditional like game space of like, oh, I made a video game. It's you run, you're a little guy, you run, you collect things, you get points. Uh,
Mhm.
because I'm like, oh, I've seen that before, and I'm looking. I mean, I'll put in a couple because I like them, but also it's kind of like my backdoor way of like uh, getting people to make more traditional games into thinking about like they're in this group with 9 other games and they have games like Meg's games that are like, oh wait, this isn't like,
Right.
and then they play them and they kind of like starts to get them thinking about like the potential of like the medium and like what games can be more broadly.
Right.
I always think,
Okay, I found it.
okay,
Thing. 60 Days Till the World Ends by A.V. Dossow. It is a very sort of dark quasi horror thing with the surprise. It's, I mean, it's sort of like if you take a somewhat dark teenager's sarcastic sense of humor and make it literal, and
yeah,
then it turns out to be, I mean, the ending, there are two possible endings, and they're two very, I mean, you get to decide how real what's happening has been.
Wow.
Yeah. And
uh,
And
adding that to my,
adding it to my list. Yep.
yes, I also added to my massive 8,000 long game to playlist. Which is, I mean, I have played some of those games also, and sometimes, but also that's a handy list of like, I have on the top of that list. It says, if your game's on this list, consider submitting it to Indiepocalypse. uh, and I've had people do that, and I go, "Whew, gives me an excuse to play the game right now."
Yay!
But it is like,
Yeah.
I have finite time, and uh, there's like an infinite number of games to play.
Yeah.
But it is like
Yes. What?
I love to dip in every now and then, like, oh, let me actually play these games, because I will often like play games, and like sometimes I'll like if I play quote unquote the wrong, which is to say the right game, and it just puts me like a headspace where it's like I can't play games anymore, um, or like there is a game coming up in next month's issue where usually I'm just like trucking through playing all the games, down a list, and then I played it and I'm like, okay, I will. Oh no, not next month. It's 2 months from now. I was playing it. I was like, I can't like play games anymore. I have to like step away.
Oh,
Like have you ever finished something and you just like step away and wander and like think about it?
You're on video game cooldown.
Yeah. He's like, I'm too busy thinking about this piece of art that I can't just like roll into the next one. Um, and
as a
like,
kid when reading series of books, I would like feel like I was cheating on a series if I got through it and I had to turn too quickly to the next thing.
right, right, because you want to like sit and like digest it a little. Uh, and I come across that, and that's the other like, you know, games will have person with no social media presence. The game has like one review, and uh, it's like what it completely knocks you out, and that's like why I have such a hard time kind of going with what is the popular game, or with like the game of the month kind of thing, the flavor of the month game, because there's just so much of it. There's just so many games.
Right. So many.
Yeah, and there's the the unfortunate thing of like how much money and how much time and attention you spend on something has very little to do with how good it is. So something made by someone in a weekend by themselves that has zero online footprint can be like one of the most amazing things you've ever experienced. So
Yeah, it is the nature of the internet we live on.
right.
There's just so many things that like so much of the experience of how we find out about a thing is not shaped around how much it is impactful to us or how much it could shape our lives or like whatever, but instead how much it will encourage engagement on a social media platform that is
Yeah.
not crafted for us.
Right. This kind of idea of and the very sensible thing of like wanting to talk to other people about it.
Right. Or, make people angry or whatever enough that they'll comment about it.
Yes, right. I got very excited when a friend finally had watched Jean Dielman the other day, and I was like, finally, yes, pumped, excited, but also it's in the friend group. It was like I was so close, but they didn't want to sit and listen to us talk about this laborious Belgian film for like 2 hours or whatever. But there is like it's also if you're out there wondering like I don't want to get into things that people don't like or other people may not like. I like the thrill of conversation, but let me tell you, the thrill when you connect with another person who knows what that thing is after so long, it feels great.
Yep.
It's, the highs are higher because you don't because if sometimes if you're online excessively or something, and it feels, and if you're into like whatever the thing is, it feels like the conversation already happens, around you, and you've like already burned through the conversation. Whereas there's like, you haven't talked to another person about a more niche thing, and there's like an excitement to it.
Agreed.
We were just talking broadly about I don't know, art. Games as an art form. Conversations around art and the idea of getting into niche things as a niche thing. The isolationness of niche interest. But also, you can spread those niche interests, and I'm glad to report the Blaze, my Tumblr post, my Blaze has been accepted. So we'll see how those 7,000 impressions, see if those $14 were well spent. I'm hoping they are. But because that's there's so much room for, because also I think that people have more niche interests than they lead on. You just don't hear about them. Like maybe maybe the person who does talk about whatever new game is out, and it seems like that's all they talk about. Maybe they do have played in the background like 60 itch games that month, but it's harder to talk about online because it's like the content generation of it all doesn't work. It doesn't facilitate it the same way.
Well, I think of so much of how we sometimes I say we and I realize
Yeah.
and then I need to take it to my therapist. But I think so much of how I think about creating media on the internet is not about, like, there's, people respond to things. I just watched this YouTube essay that was about the sort of the capitalism of Taylor Swift, um, and how, part of why she's so successful is because it feels like her style, her energy is connected towards what we call or what we talk about more often in the stream space as a parasocial relationship, right? Creating this element of, I'm going to let you see these like deep down whatever parts of me, and it's appealing to think that you have this personal connection with somebody, even if you actually don't. And I think that the concept of like what oftentimes shapes how things are successful on the parts of the internet that are most frequented, in social media, is that feeling of, hey, I'm getting to know, I'm seeing inside a person, whatnot. But
Yeah.
so frequently it is, at least in some part, and I say this as a streamer, like it is at least in some part performance.
Yeah.
That there is an element of how you react to a situation that is different because it's for consumption, and because there's a mask that you're putting on, a role that you're playing.
Right. There,
Um,
I wish there was like, you should each social media site should have like a settings box that when people view your things, like there's a pop up that goes, this is a version of this person that exists on this social media site. This is not that person.
right.
Because it can feel. I mean, that's part of the issue of parasocial, that people, I think, lose that realization that this is an abstracted version of a person that exists on Twitch or Twitter or something, not that person.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I don't think I was saying anything.
Well, I mean, I guess it makes me curious, like, especially as somebody who like I guess Meg is somebody who like is putting together these pieces of art that are more esoteric and are, I think, more thoughtful. And again, as somebody who was like in the 20 minutes before before I got
Yeah.
to go on, I was like, let me read Meg's stuff, and I was like, oh wait, this I feel like this is not the kind of writing that is made to be like newsletter, like packaged to be like, hey, and it's in a newsletter so that you can go through it and read it in like 5 or 10 minutes before when you're like going to work or whatever. I feel like a lot of the way that we package our writing and our reflections, it's that, how do I also make this fit for sort of almost a passive consumption?
Right.
But I feel like in order to get the depth of what it is you're saying, I really need to sit with it. And like, how do you find the do you have to do something to kind of find the space to say, let me sit down and make a thing that is going to be a deeper, chewier experience? And like, it may be more about saying what is actually personally for you as opposed to, you know, pre-chewing it for the algorithm.
I mean, I don't think I have gotten how do I put this? I don't think I've gotten good enough at pre-chewing for the algorithm slash translating into a sort of common cognitive language for writing. So it's not like I'm not like, if that makes sense. It's
Yeah.
pretty unfiltered. I mean, or sometimes unfiltered, maybe not quite, but like it's definitely trying to be something that I would find interesting more than something that the internet in this precise moment would find interesting.
Yeah.
Right. It's like maybe the idea more of curating or creating for yourself than necessarily creating for what an audience might want,
Yeah,
which
yeah.
is like, which has its strengths and benefits, if you're worried about commercialization and capitalism, uh-oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
but I think that's the kind of stuff that it's kind of like what you're saying, Josh, because you have to like sit and kind of think about it more actively and engage with it more actively rather than it being a passive newsletter that you read in 4 minutes as you woke up and you were brushing your teeth. Um, you have to like it like sticks, it like lingers longer. Um,
Right.
because it feels more distinct. It feels more like, oh no, I have not experienced this before, um, which can be like, the kind of familiarity can be a very common thing across all art forms. Like, oh yes, and it's a good thing sometimes where it's like, oh, I want more of this very specific feeling. Good thing people are making it for me.
Right.
Yes.
It's like I do
I'm
not.
honored.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say I'm honored that I appear to have created something that does feel like an original headspace. So
Yes, no, it is definitely like, and this was also like whatever 51 issues in, and I'm
yes.
and I travel in this kind of niche alternative space primarily, um, and I definitely am like always. That's the beauty of doing this, is that I'm always kind of like taken aback by that I can always be so consistently like surprised, in a good way. Uh,
Yes.
Mhm.
by what people are making. It's like almost as if like art is limitless, and and by it being like so personally derived by its very nature, you can't be it can't be you're always going to find something new. Like there's always room to be, because like this, you could have with a computer and a mouse and a keyboard, there's so many avenues to do uh, there's so many avenues for how you can like interact with games that are still unexplored.
Right.
I'm always interested when I come into a game that uses like does not use arrows or WASD for control. They have like different movement styles and everything. It's always like an interesting sort of approach, and it's like eventually you get used to it. It's something you see when you demo at cons. Some people don't know how controllers work. Uh, some people are not familiar with the concept of WASD and mouse look. So really, you forget that they're learned skills and that you can't just like learn new ones,
Mm-hmm.
and that kind of thing. It's a broad, interesting space to work in. Like even
Absolutely.
like even uh, what was I saying? Even even Meg, like even your games, even though that they're like hypertext games, kind of at their core. They don't look like Twine games. There's like different like languages, like Chaos Dancing looks like a website, at glance,
Yeah.
but it's not a website.
Yeah. Yeah. Have you, did you, by the way, did either of you peek at the console on these things?
No, no, I did not. I didn't think to.
Mm.
The console log stuff. It's fun. It's kind of funny sometimes.
Right. That.
But
Yes. No. I am reading it right now. I am now sort of like different. Yeah. There is like right because games have such a huge space, of such a huge interactive space,
Right.
yeah.
and the way you have that one page, so to speak, that runs beyond the length of the page itself. That like right, and your eye is drawn to the part where it says you don't have to read all of this. You get the idea by now. Uh, the kind of like even though you're making a static web page, what looks like a static web page is still engaging with the non-linearity of game. I mean, you can hit back from the very beginning.
Yes.
It
Yes, it goes in circles.
it is engaging with like the non-linearity of games in the way whatever like Grand Theft Auto does. It engages with all of these same aspects of like game and play and everything, but with just text and images, and it's the excitement of games, and also the things you like. It's easy to forget that, like the core excitement of games exists in like games of all spectrums and all types. Uh, I have been watching one of the things a friend. I was saying like, oh, you find the things your friends like, and you like try into one of them. One of my friends got into Dropout at work, and I've also like, yeah, it's like $6 or whatever a year. It's very cheap. And watching Game Changer, like oh right, people love play and love like learning rules,
Yes.
and and love the exploration of like learning how a system works. So it makes me think about how like we don't really need like excessive like onboarding and tutorials and stuff. Like people will like learn how to like play things given enough time.
Right.
And like
Right.
that part of the excitement is like the discovery, the excitement of discovery.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And the engagement of it all. But yeah. Yes, that is. All right, another connection of I'm looking at all these little like Also, when I add people online and go and see who follows them, I see all these little disparate connections between everything and people of like, oh, you know this person who knew this person who knew this person, but we are, as a show, cresting over the hour and a half mark, which is when I think hour and a half. I've been saying 2 hour. I think I usually do 2 hours for like a 3 guests, but I'm thinking maybe hour and a half is like a good cutoff point for two. I'm trying to find a good length for this thing, or try to not make it too long because I could just talk forever. Because I like talking to people.
I know that vibe. I do it too,
Right,
and I
no.
appreciate getting the chance to hang out with the two of you. This has been a really cool time.
Yeah. No, all of your yes, like all your Twitch, you're like 6 hours long, 4 hours long, 5 hours long. So
Yeah, don't be like me. Don't
no.
don't do. Yeah.
I have definitely I do my 1 8 hour show a year, and that's it. Uh, but it's a very specific kind of it's a new skill. It's a new skill. The always on kind of thing. But before we start to wrap this up, do either of you have any pressing last minute statements or questions or anything? I will say.
No.
Not really, just thanks.
Well,
This has been really fun and interesting. And Josh, I look forward to checking out your blog at the very least. And we'll see.
yeah,
Thank you.
just slap on some videos in the background. I found that is Let's Plays are a great like second screen experience because they are very long. uh, by the nature of games being long.
Yes.
I don't think I have any Discord. Someone typing exclamation point Discord. I don't think I set up any of that stuff because I host a show once a week. But indiepocalypse.com/Discord will get you to a Discord. Yes, I think that's the only thing I have. I have that part where Doctor Doom toots the horn. I think that might be the only thing I've done that is like integration. Generally, since I have my own URL, I just do slash. If you're looking for something that's related to you, if you do slash that thing, generally you'll find it. Like you might have found your way to the show through indiepocalypse.com/radio. I think also maybe /Twitch and /stream might get you here as well. I don't remember.
Sure. I will say if folks are looking for me, is it okay to do a little personal outro?
Oh,
Is that
Josh, this is where we're headed straight to plugs. That's the part we're headed towards.
Oh, okay.
That's the final segment, and you're up first. So actually, this is actually the perfect time.
Oh hell. Well, yeah. Thank you again for the time and for getting the chance to meet y'all. You can find me at twitch.tv/Intelligame, INTELLIGAME. It's like intelligent, but with game at the end.
Yes.
Which is why some people do say Intelligame, like it's
Yes.
okay. But yeah, I stream usually Mondays through Thursdays, starting at 9 a.m. Pacific time, so it's a day stream. But there's also you can also find stuff at intella.game, and I also am trying to start putting things on YouTube. I'm really intimidated by YouTube because it's such a larger space, and also my ADHD perfectionism gets in the way.
Right.
As opposed to stream where I just press the button and it's like it doesn't matter how badly you fuck up, it's still out there on the internet. So, but yeah, I have some other things. I would encourage. It's like I think the best one for all the stuff is what is it? Linktree.com/Intelligame.
Let me see. I think it is on your. Oh, you got it. Perfect.
Yeah. Nope, I don't know how to. Oh, it's link t dot. I did too many dots. Anyway, it's
Yes,
linkter.e/intelligame. I don't know why they did that, but okay.
I got you covered. Don't worry about it.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, that is there's definitely yeah no I part of why I'm putting this show on YouTube. This show, Indiepocalypse, is my hangout show. It's like my low. I edit this show by taking out the music, um, and that's the extent of my editing of the show.
That's cool. Very
There,
efficient.
yeah. Um, I save my obsessiveness for different areas. But yeah, no, that is Josh. Check out Josh's stuff. You've been around. You got a lot of stuff. That link tree is a heavy link tree. And is the point of this show is nothing else but to get people to check out the people who are on this show. That's kind of like, I guess, my broad goal for everything is you get people to check out the things that, like, that's why these people are here, so you can check out their stuff. Indiepocalypse is not the end goal of this. It's the gateway. And speaking of the gateway, Megan, where can people find your stuff if they're looking to find it?
Ooh, my stuff, itch.io will have my game things, and they will continue to be added at a gradual pace. I'm Dreams with Open Eyes. I am Dreams with Open Eyes on most of the internet. Check out my Instagram has a bunch of my art. And that's also Dreams with Open Eyes. On Twitter, I'm at Open Eye Dreaming, but I've kind of dropped Twitter since it exploded and turned into X.
Yes.
Yeah, it's the fascism that's just not really attractive. Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
it's one of those, like, you dump a link on there and you move on your way. That's my general philosophy with it. Is like I dump a link and move on my way, because that is the unfortunate thing of that is where most of the people exist. But that's also why I'm blazing on Tumblr.
Yes.
To kind of get myself out of that ecosystem and get myself in like a broader slew of different areas, or the ultimate ecosystem of people who just think about Indiepocalypse outside of any social media site, maybe.
Yeah.
I guess that's the true dream of an artist, is to live to be platform agnostic.
Yes.
Right.
It's just a matter of figuring out how to do that. That said, I mentioned it at the top, indiepocalypse.com. That's my website. I mean, if you want to find me social media wise, I am generally Pizza Pranks on all social media platforms. I use them all inconsistently because this is my preferred version of interacting with people, which is to say talking to them rather than the problem is social media is not built for conversation. I think I talked about this on the last show. It's a very weird way of interacting with someone where you just say things and hope people will talk to you. It's a very odd version of interaction.
Yes.
And I don't like it. But Indiepocalypse.com, you can get all copies of Indiepocalypse. If you buy issue 51, for instance, Meg, here at some point, 5-6 months from now, we'll get a nice $5 PayPal royalty, as Indiepocalypse is wont to do. That is, philosophically it doesn't pay out a lot, but it pays out something occasionally. And if someone is profiting off of your work, you should be profiting off of it too. You mentioned tapes earlier. Indiepocalypse.com/tape. That is the term that I use for putting a USB stick inside of a cassette case and selling it as a video game. You can get those there. There's also the Pizza Pranks Video Game Tape Club, which is like a monthly tape club of different singular games. We've had in the past In Outcry and Shotgun King. This month rather, just released this a couple of days ago is Boss Game. Is May's release of the Video Game Tape Club. So like get that there. If you want to join Indiepocalypse, of course, indiepocalypse.com/submit. If you make games and you'd like to submit to those, indiepocalypse.com/Patreon. If you'd like to subscribe instead of buying it every month, that's also the only place where you can get for only $5. You get purely just the commissioned games, which is a real bargain for like some of the most like, hey, Andrew to go down and reach into like exciting movers and shakers in the alternative indie game space and saying, here's some money, make a brand new game that's whatever you want to be. And then they do that, and they're cool games. I think that's it. I don't think I have any of the URLs. If you're in the Atlanta area and you're listening to this live and you're in the Atlanta area, I will be at MomoCon all next weekend. So you can stop by and get Indiepocalypse tapes in person. See me as I hurriedly work 8 to 10 hour days by myself for 4 days straight. The joy of that. But that said, that's everything. I think that's everything. Josh, Meg, thank you so much for joining me here today. It's a lot of fun to do the show. Glad to have you both here.
Thank you for the invite.
Thank you.
I'm going to close down the show, everyone. Goodbye.